How's it going, folks? I am Marty with Reel and Roam Outdoors, and I wanted to show you what it takes to have a successful day out at ice fishing. Call it ice fishing for beginners. I am in my hub shack right now. I'm actually fishing with my rod and reel, and we have been on the bluegill real good today. So we have been catching a lot of fish. It's been great. It's nice and warm in the shack, and I figured what a better time when I have all my gear out here to show you what you need for a successful day and how to ice fish for beginners. So the first thing that I wanted to chat about is the gear that you need. So this is going to be a multi-part video, so I should have the chapters down in the description. We're going to start off with gear, and then we'll talk about time of day, what you're targeting, where you're going. Then we'll talk about what the fish actually want, what are we using for bait. So in terms of gear, you can go all the way on the extreme end of the spectrum, and you can have a shack with a bunch of stuff in it, and like I have here, but you really only need a couple of things. The first thing that is the utmost important is a rod. I have a little clam noodle rod here, 2 mil jig on there. And when you're targeting these smaller fish and these more finicky fish through the ice like panfish, it really helps to have a smaller presentation because these fish normally aren't the most aggressive. What you saw me put on there is a dead waxworm. I ran out of live waxworms. You normally want to use live ones. But then, that's really all you need for gear in terms of rods and reels and tackle. You need a couple of jigs, some waxworms, and a rod with relatively light line. I'm fishing 2-pound fluorocarbon, but I see a lot of folks have success with fishing 4-pound or 6-pound. It's kind of up to your comfortability. That is the main thing that you need. Now, outside of that, there's one other aspect that's different on hard water fishing versus open water fishing. You need to get to the water, and to get to the water you need an auger. So this auger is a Strike Master, and it's the 24 volt version, and it's automatic. So if I were to try and drill a hole, I would turn it on and it would start to drill. Once you drill your hole, you probably are going to want to scoop, kind of like this. So you scoop the slush out of your hole, and then that way you're able to have your bait go through the hole and it doesn't get caught on all the slush. If you were to ask me what gear is the bare minimum that I need to go ice fishing, rod and reel, your bait and your jig, your line, and an auger and a scoop. That's all you need. Now, to get more into some of the stuff that's nice to have, I am wearing a float suit. This suit is by Clam Ice Armor is the brand, but this is really good for first ice when you're not sure if the ice is fully safe. This suit's going to act a little bit like a life preserver and is going to keep you afloat should you go through the ice. If you're new to ice fishing, I strongly encourage you, only go where folks have been, only go where you're seeing other folks, and that's going to help you make sure that you are safe. Now that you have your rod and reel, how you're going to catch your fish, meaning your bait, how you're going to get to the water, your auger, and you're nice and warm and safe in your float suit, you might be wondering, what else do I need? And I just hooked up on a fish here. The other thing you need is some type of sled. Now, not everybody uses a sled. Also, nice gill. Not everybody uses a sled, but as you get more things, you're going to need to take more things out onto the ice, and as you take more things out on the ice, a sled becomes increasingly valuable. The main things to look for in a sled is to make sure that it's big enough and that it pulls easy enough. You don't want a sled that's going to be huge, but it's going to be impossible to pull, because then you're going to be stuck pulling a heavy sled. And a lot of early ice, or ice fishing for panfish, is moving around. Now that you have your sled and you know how you're going to get all your stuff out there, you're ready to go out and you're ready to catch a fish. But you might be wondering, how do I know where to go? Without electronics, it becomes very tough. There's another one. it becomes very tough to know where to go because you don't have a good idea of what the water below you looks like. There's another nice gill. Now, if the water below, meaning when I say water below you, I don't mean what's the water clarity. I mean what's below me in the water. A lot of times these gills want to be in a nice open basin with no weeds, but they'll duck into those weeds for cover. So it totally depends on your lake. I use a combination of Onyx and the Garmin Active Captain apps to help me find places that I think are going to hold fish. But if you're brand new to ice fishing, go out somewhere where there's shanties and use your auger and drill a couple holes. If there's shanties there, there's most likely fish there, and you have a pretty good shot at catching them. There's another fish. I am on fire today. So now that you have your core components and you're out there fishing, there's a couple of things that you want to be mindful of as you fish, and I'm going to switch you over to the GoPro here so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So I have my live scope set up right here, and I have my jig with my little wax worm on it, and I'm going to drop basically all the way to the bottom, and you can do the exact same thing even if you don't have a Vexilar or a live scope. So you drop all the way to the bottom until your line stops taking any down, and you're going to reel up, and you're just going to reel up until you can feel your jig when you move your rod. You're going to want to keep it right around this bottom area for most of the time, and just start jigging a little bit up and down, up and down. You can also dead stick, which is also just keeping your rod still. You can have a set rod, which is basically a dead stick presentation, and you don't have to watch it. But as you kind of jig your rod, if you have electronics, being a Vexilar or a live scope, you'll be able to see as the fish come in. So right now I have a fish coming in to my right about a foot away from me. When I'm using my electronics to try and locate these fish, I'm looking for any marks on my screen that look clearly like knotweeds or are moving around. Once I've found the fish, I'm going to drop down and I'm going to wait for them to see my jig. You'll know when they see your jig. You'll be able to tell. And then as they start to follow it up, you can bring your rod and your bait up. So this fish is following my bait up a little bit. And when they follow it up, they're more likely to bite. So you're about to see here, I'm twitching my rod just a little bit. I brought my bait up, and I just caught my fish. That's a really nice fish. He's really fired up. Wow, that's a beautiful sunfish, guys. Thanks for playing along for the demo. Holy smokes, people. That's a great fish. Not expecting to catch something like that for a demo. Look at how beautiful he is. Wow. And here you can see the underbelly, just bright orange. Gorgeous fish. Oh man, what a pretty dinner plate. But that, thanks for playing along for the demo, buddy. We're going to send you back home. See ya. That is how you catch a fish once you've located where the fish are. A couple more helpful tips that I find, and it totally depends on the lake that you're fishing. You may be in a lake that's predominantly weeds, like Monona, right? So I am in Monona Bay right now, and I am fishing in 7.6 feet of water. That's an abnormal amount of water for the bay to hold. It's not normally that deep. So what I did is I looked for these areas that are a little bit different and off the beaten path than other areas of the bay. And a lot of times 80% of your fish will be in 20% of your water. So anything that looks different or interesting to you might be different or interesting to the fish. That's where reading a chart and learning the water that you're going to fish really comes into play for catching decent fish. But for any of the lakes around the Madison area, really the best thing to do is go fish Monona Bay if you're trying to catch panfish. You can also fish Lake Wingra. That is an excellent, but they're very small, but an excellent fishery to catch fish. But Monona Bay, you really can't go wrong. As long as you're not in the super weedy area, you have a good chance at catching some nice fish. Really, those are the main things that you need to start ice fishing. There's a lot of stuff that's nice to have. If you're going to get electronics, you can either go with the Live Scope or a Vexilar. Markham also makes decent items, but there's kind of two classifications of ice fishing electronics, those being flashers and Live Scope, or forward-facing sonar. I find forward-facing sonar to be more engaging because I can see where the fish are at and what's around me. It also helps me get a feel for exactly what I'm seeing on the bottom because it gives me a picture rather than red lines. But a flasher works just as well, and that's what I started out ice fishing with. I'm just slaying them. I don't know what's going on. I can't even stop catching fish for the video. That's how you begin ice fishing. If you folks have any questions, feel free to drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear about or see. And I'm more than happy to show you folks. Ice fishing is an awesome way to get out and do something during this cold weather that we have. Just make sure that you dress appropriately. The float suits double, and the added benefit is they're extremely warm, so that's a big bonus. But if you're not wearing a float suit, make sure you dress warm, make sure you bring mittens and gloves, and just get out there and go have some fun. Ice fishing is for everybody. There's not really one class or one group of people who can do it better than anyone else. So get out there and just try and catch some fish. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll be responding to those as frequently as I can. And if you need any spots in the Madison area, go out and look for yourself. There's plenty of stuff, but the bay is always good this time of year. So get out there, catch some fish, and hopefully I'll see you out here.